and similar ships have been spotted across the world.
Widespread panic is escalating after the sudden appearance of alien spaceships, unexplained sightings, and strange activity over military bases.
Brian Hansen directs and co-writes The Bunker. This is an alien invasion movie that kind of feels like a COVID era movie. Why do I say that? Because the bulk of this movie is one of these Zoom call meeting style films. Although I'm not actually sure it was actually filmed then, it just maybe apes that style. It isn't all like that, but a good portion of it is. So we have a situation where the world is experiencing first contact with an alien race. There is a number of large kind of mothership style flying saucer types over major cities across the world, and at this point they're just kind of hanging there, but no one really knows what the intention is. So think of the beginning of like Independence Day or the TV series V. It kind of starts a little bit like that. The movie focuses on a microbiologist scientist who is called up by the government to develop a bioweapon in case the aliens are hostile. So she is sent to an underground bunker on her own. And she's kind of part of a team of scientists, each of whom have a bunker. And in the bunker is kind of a chair that shields them from any kind of scans that the aliens might do. And as the film progresses, they're kind of somewhat cut off from the outside world, only communicating with each other. There seems to be aliens flying above doing these scans, but there's these kind of group of scientists, all of whom are in their own separate bunkers, seem to be reacting badly to these scans and sort of causing them to commit suicide. Our main character seems to be having some type of visions. Maybe she's partially infected, or is it just cabin fever? Is it paranoia? Is it just the kind of the walls are closing in? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. So obviously a very low budget, hence the need for this kind of COVID era style presentation. It does have a couple of recognisable actors in it, in the form of Tony Todd and Tobin Bell, both of which are small roles and both of which are kind of roles that are via Zoom camera, like a video conference meeting, so you know, not actually people conversing one-on-one. But they are there and they crop up a few times. So what works in this movie's favour? I mean, I think the idea here is to have like a scientific view of the response of an alien invasion. So this really focuses primarily and entirely almost on a group of scientists and their reactions, their research, their thoughts on what is happening with this kind of alien invasion and how they are trying to prepare for some type of bacterial or biological defense that will kill aliens but not humans. So I think it's a very neat idea in the way that this movie is obviously circumventing its clearly low budget, but also having an interesting and somewhat fresh and original idea on a alien invasion take. And I will say, although we don't see a lot of aliens or alien craft in the movie, when we do, I think it's actually done to a pretty good standard. The actual VFX here are used sparingly, but when we do see it, I think I've got to say, it looks pretty good, especially when you consider this is a very low budget film. And obviously, it's somewhat of a psychological movie in some ways because, you know, these scientists are underground on their own for, you know, months at a time, and obviously there's paranoia, there's cabin fever, you know, just a sort of the sense of isolation and loneliness that they're all kind of dealing with. And this adds that, obviously, in such a high pressure environment anyway, when they know that there's an alien invasion and they're all worrying about their families and they're cut off because they can't kind of communicate. So, you know, I thought it did lend itself to some psychological drama. I think the acting is reasonable from our cast here. I think they do an okay job. And it does have some kind of quite tense moments where they're trying to figure out this kind of biological weapon and it's not quite working, or it's working but it will kill humans, things like this, and there's arguments about the best course of action. And I like the kind of the fact that this movie kind of takes the science relatively seriously, at least in some parts, I would suggest. So it did seem sort of like a harder sci-fi in respects. This is less about green aliens and shooty lasers and things. It's more about the scientific response, about how to kind of deal with such a threat and what that kind of might look like. I quite like the kind of the sets of these kind of bunkers. I mean, considering this possibly was a COVID era movie, I mean, I think the set design's still pretty good. So there's got to have been people working together to kind of get these kind of sets looking the way they are. I gotta say, I thought they looked pretty fun, and you know, we see glimpses of the world outside, and but you don't really know what's going on because the movie deliberately keeps you in the dark, as well as our characters. What doesn't work? I mean, it's not all a kind of Zoom camera meeting type film, which I have to say, in a way, that was a good thing because it gives some variation. But I don't know why we had so much footage as a kind of Zoom meeting if this wasn't like a sort of found footage style movie, which it isn't, because there's probably about 40% of the footage which is not on a Zoom meeting. And as such, why do we have, if it's not doing that, if it's not being like a kind of a footage that has been recovered style film, why do we have such amount of footage as a Zoom meeting? It's kind of like one of these sort of hybrid movies, and it's like I don't really understand the mindset of what the thinking was, how this kind of format works, this kind of hybrid format. To me, I think it works better if it's one or the other. I don't know if this kind of hybrid partial found footage style is particularly conducive, because you can't buy into it. I mean, the whole idea of a found footage movie, or at least this kind of subsidiary of a found footage movie, is that you are watching recovered footage that is meant to be recorded. And obviously, if you have music or scenes that aren't kind of found footage, it's sort of, it messes with the effect. So there's that. Now, this is just literally people talking in rooms, and for like 98% of this movie. If that's not something that's going to interest you, then you're probably not going to watch this film. Obviously, it's a way to, as I say, get around clearly low budget, but ultimately it is the literal people talking in rooms. And I've got to say, as much as I think this movie does rely heavily on scientific speak and theories and things, which I found quite interesting, there's things that somewhat shattered that illusion to me. For a start, these chairs that are meant to keep them safe from scans. I mean, how were they made so quickly? Apparently, they've only just started scanning. What happens is that these smaller craft fly over military installations and scan, and what these scans cause humans to basically go mad and kill themselves. But they've already got a fully functioning kind of chair that will protect. Surely that would have taken years, if not, at the very least a month to develop. But here it is, like right when the invasion has happened. It's like, well, considering this movie's meant to be taking the science pretty seriously, it seems a real oversight that that's a complete piece of technology and each one of these labs has it. I get that there might be underground labs, but why would there be this functioning kind of machine be in all of these labs? Doesn't really make any sense. And I have to say as well, the the way these scientists are written, I don't know if I would really call this like a realistic portrayal of great scientific minds working on a problem that is going to affect the fate of humanity. It just seems like some of the big personalities that this kind of they want to have in this movie overshadows the sort of the seriousness of what they're doing here and the kind of the professionalism that I would have assumed that you would have got. Like for example, one guy seems to just want to flirt with our main sort of female protagonist. One guy is just intent on being an asshole. It's just like, no, you know, these are meant to be the greatest scientific minds in America, yet they're kind of like, they squabble like kids at times. I don't know. I mean, I guess there'd be a degree of that perhaps because you'd have pressure, but I would have assumed it would be more intellectual. You know, so there's that. Our main protagonist, now, she gets scanned early on, and it looks like her machine doesn't completely work, so she's somewhat affected by it, and she is told by her commander, played by Todd, that if she is compromised, she shouldn't be on it. She shouldn't be on this team. But she lies and says she's not, you know, she's not compromised. And I'm thinking, well, you don't know what you're going to be, you know, what you may or may not do. So why would you lie? It seemed like a real, like, this is some really important stuff here. If you have been at least even partially kind of compromised, which is what it appears to have happened, you know, surely you would excuse yourself. But she doesn't. And I just thought, again, it's that sort of lack of professionalism and things like that. And this one guy's going to go, oh, you know, you're not a very good scientist and all this. And I'm like, well, kind of agree. Kind of agree, but she's our main protagonist here. So, you know, I think this movie is not as smart as maybe it would like to be, or maybe it would pretend to be. And I think ultimately the movie has an interesting premise, and I think it's visually, it does the best that it can, considering it's kind of these very kind of set locations that all look the same and stuff, but there is some visual flair to it. The acting is okay, but I think the characters are written in a way that it didn't seem like top level professional scientists to me, you know. I guess they're humans, but you know, whenever you watch kind of like, I don't know if you ever watch kind of like news when they interview scientists, they don't appear to kind of like talk like this a lot of the time. So overall, I think it's a bit of a missed opportunity without kind of being necessarily a complete flop or anything like that. I think there's elements here that make this watchable, but it kind of misses the mark on being a hard sci-fi, and it's not as exciting to be like a spectacle kind of sci-fi. So I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What do you think? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.